and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and today we have the honor of talking with the author of a very serious but a very happy book. It is called Joyful, Delicious Vegan: Life Without Heart Disease. So you can tell we're going to talk a little bit with Shara Aguirre about the good news of a way of avoiding health disease, and the bad news, the fact that in the Black community, so many of us suffer with this and so many other diseases. Shara, before we get into the diseases, thank you for being with us, and thank you for writing this book, which is a cookbook for those who cook or who want to, but also it's a life book. Tell us how you came to write this, put this, really prescription for good living together.
Well, Carol, thanks so much for having me. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been an admirer of yours and your work for many, many years. And so I'm honored to be here. And yes, I love the way you described it, a serious but happy book. That's exactly what I was going for. So I appreciate it. But I came to it because of the very reasons that you cited, the epidemic of basically chronic diseases, which are actually preventable and actually related to what we eat and how we live, kind of our lifestyle. And it's really devastating to our communities. In fact, heart disease is the #1 killer in the US of all causes. That's accidental causes, wars, pandemics. Heart disease is still #1. And as we all know, with the current coronavirus pandemic, heart disease is one of those underlying conditions that makes it more difficult to recover from the virus if you get it.
And in the book, you go through all of this in such a wonderful, wonderful way. I was listening to your podcast yesterday where you tell your family story, and I have a similar family story, of so many people being struck down by these diseases. And we're going to get to the vegan part of it soon, but tell us a little bit about your particular family history. I was shocked, to know that so much, with young people in your family had happened.
Right, and you're right, it's a similar story that many of us have. For as long as I could remember from childhood, both my parents were on high blood pressure medications. That's something that they lived with and that many other family members lived with. On my mom's side, my grandmother had a stroke at about my age, which left her paralyzed on one side. And I remember my mom working with her. We were in a little country town and she did her best to, get her back to functionality. And she did some of that, but she was never the same. And then my grandfather died of a massive heart attack in his 50s. On my dad's side, I had an uncle who had 5 heart attacks, and the last one took his life while he also battled cancer. The two most, I think, shocking and devastating losses that we had were in my generation, my cousins, who were actually younger than I was. Mm-hmm. One of them went to work. He worked at a correctional facility, came home with a splitting headache, went to bed and never woke up. And he had been on medications for high blood pressure, thought it was under control, but we think that it was an aneurysm that took him. Left him with 2 small kids. And then I had another cousin, also in his 40s, early 40s, that was going on a vacation with his wife, and they were at the airport. He got stuck in security, and she went on to the gate. He never showed up. She backtracked, saw a small crowd in the concourse, made her way to the front, and there lay her husband. It was his very first heart attack and fatal. Wow. So these were the stories that I grew up with. And so I was always looking for, what can I do different? Or is this my destiny? That was my struggle that led to the research, the study, and the passion.
Yeah, and so many of us in the Black community really just think of this as our destiny, that it's our genes, it's always happened, this is the way it is, and during this entire pandemic, we saw that in the Black community, the underlying health issues were often the things that made us not able to survive COVID. COVID-19.
Right.
And so ever more reason for all of us to pay attention to what you're writing about and what you're suggesting about changes in our lifestyle. So you were always looking, and I know that you've dedicated this book to your mom, which was another experience that so many of us have. I had the same, situation in my family as well. When you think about it, you say, and I've actually seen people who put racism as a piece of all of this, but also the cultural habits that we've acquired, traditions that contribute to it. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. And you're right, the social and cultural aspects are really important. And even our cultural food traditions were shaped by our situation in this country as being brought over without any choice of what we had to eat, how we lived. We were slaves, right? And so often the only things we had to cook with were the things that were grown on the farm. And of course, that would have been true of most people in the South at that time. But for Black people, we got whatever other people didn't want. But
Right.
we made a wonderful cuisine out of that. I mean, out of all of that came soul food and the tastes and flavors that are so great. And
We
so
love
the
it.
joy,
And we love it, love it, love it. Right? Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with loving it, but we've got to change how we do it.
Right.
What,
Right.
what I tell people is that at this point, I have the attitude that I'm not giving up anything that I love. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to eat the meat, but I'm going to have the same taste. I'm going to have the same flavors. I'm going to have the same experience. And it's all about spices and, learning how to work with textures and what you come up with. And I'm not a chef, and my book really is not a cookbook, but it has some nice recipes in it.
Right.
Some of them I'm really proud of because I never liked cooking, but I got into it because it's a different mindset now. I'm cooking for my health. I'm doing something positive for myself. I'm enjoying it more than I ever have, and I love to eat. And so my message of joy is that it's not about depriving yourself. It's not about giving up. We have to focus on what we have to gain and where we're going, and we'll love it just as much.
Right. So talk to us then about, because it's a plant-based diet that you are recommending. So many people may say, and what exactly does that mean? And also, I'm glad to say that to hear you say that you're not a cook, so it's not all about. But many people would say, "Do I have to be a cook in order to eat this way?" So tell us about the plant-based diet first.
Sure. And to make it really simple, it's really what we've always eaten. I mean, most of our diet is plants anyway. We eat the fruits, we eat the vegetables, we eat beans, we eat rice, we eat corn, we eat cornbread, we eat collards, we eat all of that stuff is plant-based. What we don't do is we don't add animal products to that, but we create the flavors and the wonderful taste and the experience just by being a little bit creative and a little bit daring about how we do it and daring to try something different. People don't like change, even when it's good for us, even when it's necessary. But so that's why my message, I wanted to have people look at this as an experience, not just for their health, but also for their enjoyment of food. Not having conflict around what we're eating is a very good source of joy.
Not having conflict around what we eat. Expand that concept for us.
Right. I mean, many times in our culture, the paradigm is whatever is good for you is going to taste bad, and whatever is bad for you, that's what you're really going to want. I'm flipping that. What I'm saying about not having conflict over food. Once we love the foods that we're eating, we learn how to love foods that love us back. The conflict goes away. So when you're eating plant-based, one of the wonderful things is as long as you're eating plants and you're not putting oils and lots of fats and all that in it, other than the natural fats that come in the foods themselves, you can pretty much eat all you want and your weight kind of just takes care of itself. So that's what I mean by not having conflict, not worrying about, oh God, I really want that cake, but I know I can't have it, but I really want it. There are vegan pastries that you can make. Now, not everything vegan is healthy. Let me say that. And what I mean by that, French fries are vegan, right?
Yeah.
We all grew up eating French fries, and they're certainly a plant, a potato, but the frying process with the oils means that if you're really trying to restore your health, you're not going to eat French fries as part of that process. But you can bake potato sticks that taste really good, don't have all the oil. And the thing that happens, Carol, is that your palate adjusts. So it doesn't take long for your palate to start appreciating what's really good for you. And when that starts to happen, some of the things that used to be, I used to eat fried chicken, and that was one of the things that led me to, when I was around 30, turning 30, I thought, God, I got to do something different, because my energy would fall through the floor after eating my fast food lunch. And so I started little by little associating, like trying to figure out the connection between what I ate and how I felt later. And so it's just, over time, I could not eat a greasy piece of chicken now if I tried. It would just turn me off. And I appreciate now the flavors in foods and the subtleties in the flavors. I appreciate the colors that are so vibrant when we don't overcook them. But I still want taste. I want all my spices, I want it to taste really good. I want it all. And my message is, with effort and learning how to do it, we can really enjoy food without the worry of, is it good for me? Is it not good for me? Am I going to gain weight? That kind of goes away. And then you have more energy, you feel better. So it's just wonderful. And that's why I wanted to share this experience.
Right, right. So let's talk a little bit more about writing the book. So many people have this revelation, I've got to change what I'm eating, the practice of my daily life, because you talk about more than just the eating. It's the meditation, it's yoga, it's exercise. It really, what this book does is it really turns you away from all of those unhealthy things towards a healthier life, and actually can save your life. Although you put a caution at the beginning of the book, check with your doctor. This is not a prescription for everybody. You still have to go to the doctor. So talk to us about the writing process and how you knew that you had learned enough to share that with the world.
Well, I always say that I wrote this book 3 times, because I was really slow at coming to this. I had a business, I was busy. I started writing the book because I was so passionate about health and wellness. And I knew I wanted to share that with people and wanted to communicate that, but I didn't have the time to spend on it. So, this space of food and nutrition and health has been moving so fast. There's so many more studies that are just undeniably supporting that a plant-based diet is the foundation for getting rid of chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, even Alzheimer's. And I'll speak a little bit about that, because that was what my experience with my mom and her last years. That was my experience with her. And I wish I had known then that diet played a big role in Alzheimer's, because it's all about inflammation, systemic inflammation that animal foods trigger in the body. And when we're young, our immune systems are robust, and, we don't notice it. As we grow up, and get older,
Sure.
We have to pay more attention to what we put in our bodies. Again, making sure we stay active. You mentioned the meditation. Meditation is wonderful. It's not necessary for everybody. I think it's wonderful if you love it. But taking a walk in a park can be meditative. Anything that you do when you quiet your mind and you focus on what you're doing in that moment,
right.
It can be meditative and can reduce stress and can enhance your health. And the other thing that's been really, that I really appreciate, is that I've learned so much. So some of the things I believed and held to be true, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there's more data now, there's more science now, there's more information now. So this has been a journey of discovery and learning for me. And so I kept incorporating, the space kept moving and I had to keep moving with it. So I've just learned a lot.
Right, right. So now let's go through quickly because now you've mentioned heart disease and Alzheimer's that you think the vegan diet can help. What else? I know the other things that plague Black Americans, the diabetes, asthma. I mean, everything that you can imagine. Our rates are higher than the general population. So you believe that eating vegan is a step in the right direction for minimizing the effects of.
Yes, a plant-based diet is definitely for sure. The asthma, I'm not going to make a connection with because I'm not aware that it impacts that. But it impacts our general health, which helps us with all of those things. But definitely, heart disease is completely preventable. The China study, which was done back in, I think it was published in 2004, it went on for longer than that. It was Cornell University, Oxford. Basically, what they noticed is that in societies that have not yet adopted a Western diet with our heavy reliance on animal foods, meat at every meal, heart disease is virtually non-existent. And so they started noticing this all over the world in places where people still ate kind of the same kind of diet that was mostly plant-based, even if there was some animal product there. And so those are the things that led to, I guess, the general understanding that we have now that the inflammation that basically animal foods create in the human body, those are the underlying conditions which lead to things like heart disease, even cancers, even common cancers like prostate and breast cancer. There's a new study now, I think it's from Cornell, that says that eating a plant-based diet for postmenopausal women can reduce the risk of death for breast cancer by 21%.
Wow, that's a big number, 21%.
I would take that number to heart, yes.
I know we all would. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. You know, so many things that are affected. So you know, we're saying it. It's not really a cookbook, although you have the recipes. If you were going to sit down to your favorite vegan meal, what would that be? What's your favorite recipe of? Everybody's going to go get the book, and then you'll be able to practice. And
I would love that.
We're all going to be so healthy and happy.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a Southern girl, right? I'm here in Texas. I grew up in Texas. So the one thing that I worked the hardest on in this book, because I just wanted to get it right, was cornbread. I wanted a good vegan cornbread. And there were many recipes. But again, I wasn't really a great cook. So I actually worked with a chef, a young lady, Karen Fernandez, that I met at a vegan festival. And so she helped me with a lot of the recipes. And then I got to the point, Carol, where I actually enjoyed it and I started playing around with them on my own. And I came up with this fantastic cornbread that's in the, and I think people will love it. It's baked with all the traditional ingredients except for the eggs and milk. And what takes the place of the eggs for binding purposes is a combination of applesauce and almond butter. So it's rich, you know, it has a sweet finish, you know, to it. And of course you substitute plant milk for the regular milk, but the ingredients are so wholesome and that comes through in the final taste. So you can tell I get excited. I can get excited about cornbread.
Right. Well, so many people are excited. I have not seen her social media posts, but Tabitha Brown is a young black woman who is, you know, into this, you know, space as well. You're doing a podcast. I'm sure we're going to see you on Instagram and everywhere, right? You're there. So you think this is a wave that's catching on?
Oh my God. I think it was Forbes magazine that had an article in 2018, I think, that said the number of people who are self-reporting as vegan is up 600%. I think that was like a 3-year period, 600%. The other thing that's really interesting is that Black Americans are 3 times more likely to identify as vegan than any other group of Americans. Even though the movement, even though the movement sometimes appears to be, led by, affluent people, generally, white people, affluent people, but Black people really are the biggest base for veganism.
That is shocking. Good news, in that we are now apparently trying to save our lives. And as I say, I'm moving in your direction. I'm, naturally less and less and actually in the meat space believe in humane, I serve on a board where, all of the animals under our care, millions of them around the world now, have to be treated humanely, which we believe eliminates, some of the, but then my vegan friends say, yeah, but still at the end, right? So moving in your direction.
It's a step in the right direction. And animal ethics is a big, one of what I call the 3 pillars of a plant-based or vegan diet. You have obviously the health benefit, you have the animal rights and humane treatment of animals aspect. And then the other, which surprises some people, is its relationship to climate change because of the practices in the food industry.
Tell us about that a bit, climate change.
Yes, so it turns out that according to the UN, the FAO, that industrial agriculture is close to the biggest impact on greenhouse gas emissions of any other sector, including energy. Another study from Oxford, and this was published several years ago, says that going to a plant-based diet is the one biggest change that any person can make to reduce their footprint and do the most to reverse climate change. It would have, if everybody did it, of course, everybody's not going to do it, but theoretically, if everybody did it, it would have a bigger impact than all of the pollution from cars, airplanes, the whole transport sector. It would surpass the reversal, of the greenhouse gases, the global warming, more than those things. So it turns out what we eat is more important than what we drive.
Unbelievable. I'm so glad you made that connection. So not only are we saving our own lives, we're saving the earth by eating this way. So what's next for the book? Big debut coming up, available May 25th and beyond, everywhere.
Yes. Available for pre-order now online, but I'm just really excited. So I'm trying to get through this process of the launch, and there's lots of activity, and I'm just really happy to have, the opportunity to be with you today and doing a few other interviews and things like that to kind of get the message out about the book. So there will be actually a book launch party coming up, a couple of them, and a few bookstore, virtual, events.
Right.
So I'm excited about.
And you've got are your two writer daughters participating in all of this? Shara has 2, Attica Locke and Tembi Locke, both, right. Literature and Hollywood famous. So they'll be.
They're working hard with their own projects. But yes, we're going to do a Mother's Day show together for a radio, an Austin radio station.
Oh, that's great. And we should say that Shara is based in Houston. And Thank you so much, Shara. I never expected to get into the climate change space as when we're talking about vegan eating, but thank you for being with us today, and much success. And thank you for, helping us to live right. We've got to save our own lives here. Thanks to you all out there for being with us today. The book is Joyful, Delicious, Vegan, Life Without Heart Disease. Please pick up a copy. And we hope you will join us the next time. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America.